if we want to bring next billion user in Web3, we have to bring next million apps that have same level of experience like Web2, if not better than Web2.
That was Zahid, founder of Jutsu and one of the superstar builders in the Near ecosystem. I really enjoy this podcast with Zahid because he has been heads down building and sometimes comes across as a quiet guy. But as the conversation goes on, we keep unlocking deeper and deeper levels of meaning in a wide range of domains. From Bangladesh to San Francisco, he keeps drawing on his extensive experience as a Web2 developer going into Web3, working for large AI startups, and more. Throughout, he provides a clear picture on how we can get to mass adoption, developer experience, customer obsession, best business practices. Overall, this podcast is entertaining and a masterclass of what I call the San Francisco product mindset, which, like it or not, generates results. Just one last thing before I let you enjoy this podcast with Zahid. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to the podcast. We really appreciate your support. It makes a huge difference in helping us grow and being able to secure top tier guests and funding going forward. Without further ado, let's jump in. Bye. Hello, friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Wild User Interviews podcast with me, AVB. Today, I've got with me Zahidul, the founder of Jutsu.ai. Welcome, Zahidul.
Thank you.
Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yeah, you can call me Zahid.
Zahid. Nice. Welcome to the podcast. If you have any nickname or any preferred name, just let us know and we'll roll with it. But yeah, I'm really excited to have you.
Thank you. I'm also really excited to be in your podcast. So I'm a long-term listener of your podcast, and I like the style of your podcast because I think it's more realistic than most other podcasts where you have very scripted. So I always feel that like your podcast is more like unscripted and for real. Great job.
Thank you. Thank you. It can sometimes look a little bit messy, but I also like that style. I think the first 30 minutes, 45 minutes, you definitely get to see what people tend to answer the most, the common questions, the superficial level. And then 45 minutes in, it's pretty wild usually. I enjoy it. I've always been curious like that. And I think that it certainly helps create that sense of community. Just listening to a podcast from someone, you feel like you know them a lot better, and hopefully we can build more trust. There's been some issues in the community with lack of trust. But look, the reason why I'm excited to have you is because I've had a series of guests recently, all looking into the community side, DAOs, and you are working in like proper tech. In fact, one of the funniest memories that I have from you is at ETH Denver last year at the residential house. Dude, it was breakfast. I bought a croissant and a piece of ham hanging off my mouth. And the other guy from New York, with the long hair, you didn't waste a second. Peter from the Here Wallet, laptops out all the time. I don't even know if you ate during that hacker house. But yeah, it was just amazing to see someone that knows the code so well, just keeps shipping. And I have to say, I'm very impressed at how much Jutsu has advanced. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, the fun fact is Jutsu was born from that hacker house while I was hacking during that time. So while I was building boss component, so I had really tough time. You probably saw me talking with a bunch of people there, and I really love the experience of this hacker house where they work with all these other amazing people and who are better than you. So I always like to feel like in a place where I'm not the best, and every hacker house, it was my experience was like, wow, there are so many great developers in their ecosystem and I can learn from them. And the background for Jutsu is I was building those components in that hacker house. And then I had lots of feedback that I share with near community. Hey, I think we can build a better developer experience. And these are my feedbacks. And later I found out no one was doing anything with that feedback. So I thought why not I just build a simple MBB or prototype of how I'm thinking. And then I built the first version of Jutsu and then shared, and then people start using it. And then More interesting, or to me, fulfilling part was in near APEC. So the second winner of near APEC, he come to me and then he said, "Hey, I use Jutsu," and then we win the second prize. And recently in NearCon, the first team who win the first prize, and I know this person, like, and she was saying like, "Oh, we use Jutsu," and then that saved so much time, and we were able to build and deploy it. Like they were able to pick up productive in hours. So that's how I envision we should build developer experience where, yes, it have to be sophisticated, but it have to be focused towards experience and how fast they can pick up product.
That is an amazing story. First off, I'm super happy to see that projects from the Hacker House went on to use it in the real world and further help other people win other hackathons. It's a conversation that we have often when we try to allocate community funding and grants. I know that DevHub is also looking at ways to not just get people to participate, but also to retain them and engage them over time. I didn't know that Jutsu was born at the Hacker House in Denver last year, but I hope to see you there again this year. And also, you've given us a really good warm up. I think everyone's thirsty to know what Jutsu is. What is this product giving people superpowers to win hackathons? How would you describe it in a few sentences?
I think the main goal for Jutsu is to make you productive in an hour. But the way we are doing it is now we are adding a lot more AI. And in one sentence, I explain nowadays Jutsu. Jutsu is a co-pilot for Web3 developers. So it will make you 10x more productive. What that means is in the future, you will be able to generate your smart contract, you will be able to generate your front end components, and then it will give you, let's say, 60% of the code done. And then you will have a collaboration with this AI copilot that we will build to make it more 80, 90%. Then another thing, like there are so many things as a human we are not good at and makes a lot of simple mistakes that I believe we can use AI to guide you with that. So you are building a smart contract where you put a variable where you should have a constant, or you have a memory leak, or you are assigning a variable where you should not do it. So a lot of those things, I believe AI can see your code and then give you suggestion in real time. That's where we are going. So from hackathon tools where you can build and become productive and deploy and win a hackathon to a full-fledged enterprise ready tool that a Web2 company will be able to use, and that they will get same level of experience, if not better than Web2 development, and come into Web3 and build amazing apps. So I believe the next, like a big thing for Web3 is building a lot of these enterprise and consumer apps. So yes, I understand like everyone talk about infrastructure in Web3, but I think we miss the most important part where we have to bring, if we want to bring next billion user in Web3, we have to bring next million apps that have same level of experience like Web 2, if not better than Web 2. So it is not anymore choice between, hey, we are building a very sophisticated app that do very sophisticated thing. That's why we don't have a great UI. I think from this year, you'll see more and more like, hey, we have this great experience and that does so many sophisticated thing, but you don't have to worry. So this app take care, abstract all this complexity, and that app should be usable by anyone really. So
I think that's what I liked about Jutsu, that I'm a student of history. And I don't know, the way that my brain works, I like to put things on a timeline. And sometimes I see people that are like behind or even like chasing trends. Sometimes I see people doing something that it works, but we have to be aware that it works for now. There's just no viable path into the future. And sometimes I see people in the future, but they're like missing the bridges to be able to realize the vision. I think that Jutsu, it's just at the right time where it understands the shortcomings of crypto in the past, the vision has always been there. And if you talk to the people at a philosophical vision level, I have some guests like that, we're very clear on what we want to go. The challenge is that the technology never quite allowed us to get there. And I guess that where we're at now is there is a modern stack, of layer ones, near, count abstraction, other ecosystems. But I would put that in the core infra bucket. And now what we're missing and the struggle that I think we'll have now is where do we find the founders and the builders to actually use that stack? How do we even communicate to them what the stack can do so they can build an amazing application? Not the same cookie cutter lending bullshit from 2 years ago. We want to have like next level stuff. So this is to my next question. Would you say that Jutsu is core infrastructure or a consumer application?
It depends which side you see. The way I see, let's say, who are the user and who are the customers. Every product in my mind have two groups. One is the user, one is the customer who pay for it. So from the user side, for our case, developer are the user, but most likely they are not going to be the bigger group who will pay us for the service. So for developer, it will become more like a consumer app. So it will have the simplest UI. It will have the simplest way to make developer 10x more productive. But then the developer will take it to company, and then probably inside their company they'll want to use with other people, and then company will have incentive to have this really nice workflow and developer environment that makes their developer more productive. So that's how I see it. For them, that's a infrastructure, right? So infrastructure for building and deploying and managing their application. So imagine GitHub, is it infrastructure? Absolutely, but it's also a product or developer. I believe in the future we'll have some portion that will be infrastructure, but our core philosophy is simple. Everything we need to do to make developer 10x more productive, we'll do it. If we need to build new infrastructure, new layer, new contract, or new thing, we'll do it, but we'll abstract it such a way that you just focus on your core work and we do the rest. When we are building that product, in Jutsu, it's more like we feel it's a consumer product because that makes us really focus on the experience and the UI and all the simple thing. Like in my mind, my philosophy is if I remove one click for a developer, extra click that developer have to do, and I can remove it, that's a win. So that's how I want to optimize for performance and experience and productivity.
You're based in the Bay Area, yeah?
Yes.
Look, some people may not like it, but this is what peak performance looks like. I have been battling for that product thinking for a long time, which is weird because I only had like basic product training and I've been in and out, mostly advisor roles, early testing. But that's when you realize that the product mindset was born out of the Bay Area and the epicenter is still there. And there's no barrier for anyone anywhere in the world to adopt it or learn from it. But you do see the difference in performance from teams. And as you were talking, I was thinking that to me, the difference between a consumer application and infrastructure is that a consumer application is something that people get the choice and they want to use. So you basically have to earn them. It has to be actually good and create value for them. Infrastructure is you don't really have a choice. Like you have to use it in order to achieve your purpose. So for instance, an RPC, you cannot make an RPC more sexy. You cannot compete on an RPC having better user experience. You just need it. Without an RPC, shit's not going to run.
I disagree. Yes, you are right, but I disagree in this way. So I think you still can build experience. Imagine like a Trulio, it's an API, or Stride. Like I'm giving example because we can learn a lot from Web2. So Stripe is just an API. But if they would just think, oh, we are just a payment infrastructure like everyone else, then like it would be different story. But imagine now developer loves Stripe. Developer, like a payment is not simple, but like the way they abstracted, even the API, like the way you call the API, it has an R. And I believe like a product. So first of all, I'm an engineer, like I'm building software for 15 years, so it's not really easy for me. Like you might think, oh, like a product taking is easy. It's a struggle, like where I have to do this mental jujutsu with tech versus product. But I come to
Is that where the name comes from?
kind of, yes. But I come to a conclusion. We build product for others, right? Yes, there is a consensus also in Bay Area, like you build product for yourself. But I believe I'm in some point irrelevant and we build product for people. So to go back to your statement where I disagree that you can build a better experience even in Indexer. So that's my philosophy. That's infrastructure does not have to be just infrastructure.
I mean, as a product, you still compete with other infrastructure providers, but I don't get to say all providers are shit, so I'm not going to use it. Like it just becomes embedded in the life cycle of the product. But what I think is the most interesting, and I saw it very clearly with the GitHub example, most things would start as a luxury, and then you can evolve into being such a better user experience that it becomes infrastructure. Sure, you could use CLI, but let's be honest. Wallets are core infrastructure of an ecosystem. We could have 15 different providers, and in that sense, they do compete as a consumer application. The user has a choice in which wallet to use, but wallets are core infrastructure in that way. It's not a fixed terminology. I'm spitballing here at the top of my mind, but I got the curiosity with Jutsu because of that evolution on the way that people write code. I guess I should ask you, before Jutsu, that hacker house in Denver last year, what was the experience like? Did you just go to the documentation? Did you spin up a Jupyter notebook? Are you just like raw coding it on the console? How does one even get started? The old way before Jutsu, and then we can see the evolution.
So the old way was you will go to near.social and near.social have a web IDE, but you'll write bunch of code and then you have to press a button to see how things looks like. And then if it is a bigger app, so you'll probably write it in your VS Code and then copy paste that thing. And then you can only work on the mainnet. So even you make a mistake, like you have to deploy, even for testing, every time you want to test something, you have to deploy in mainnet and then you can test. So that was the experience. And in the beginning, now the VM is a little bit better, but in the beginning, the error was not really descriptive. So it was a little bit challenging. You had no idea of seeing your app, like how it will look like in different gateway or how it will look like in phone. There are a lot of those challenges that I saw. And every time you have to do something, you have to go to documentation, there was not great documentation in a year ago, which is understandable because that time just launched. So that was the old state of how you would build a boss component.
I'm trying to remember. There is a platform, which is not going to be very useful without the name, but I'll try to find it and put it in the show notes. I find it very fun. It's a web browser IDE, and it's got like a bunch of little projects. So basically, I signed up for 100 days of Python. I already knew basic Python, but I was like, I'll just start from scratch. And I just really like project-based. And you don't have to worry about setting up your environment. You don't have to do any of that. Eventually, I did get VS Code again. Got lost somehow doing the setup. That's how technical I am. But I remember messaging, I believe it was Matt Lockyer, and I was like, dude, this is amazing. Like, it is so easy to see people's code and fork it, and you have little projects. And it was just like a simple, unified experience where they abstracted away a lot of the friction, and then you just code it. And that feeling of creating stuff, it's probably the only true superhuman that we have, superpower. You know what he said? That's what we have on like the virtual machine in your social. And I checked it out. I tried working a component to tip, and I fucked it up. If you go to my account, there's a component there that something is not working. And I was like, I like that there are people that have the vision and that we're trying to replicate this Web2 way of doing things onto Web3. It's just not there. And to a great extent, you could even argue today that near social is not a product. Near social is the amalgamation of many things and people contributing to it. but it hasn't really been developed as a product. Rinse, iteration, get a bloody graphic designer. So when I saw Jutsu, it took me a while, but then I got it. And I was like, this is much closer to that unified, simplified experience. But then talking to Cameron, he mentioned something that was what really made it click. I went from seeing how it is useful now to how it evolves into the future. And I was like, damn, now we're talking. Why AI? What is your background?
Yeah, I have been building. So, first of all, I have been building software for the last 15 years. So, it's a long time. And then worked on various different projects. But last 6 years, I was working on a lot with computer vision. It's a subset of AI. But the main thing I did was I work for a space tech company where we build a satellite-based climate risk prediction platform. So basically, you could give every single address in this world. Our focus mostly was in Europe, and then we could tell you 36 different type of climate-related risks. So like a flash flood and like a lot of things that you see in Miami about flooding and all these things. We have a platform that predict those things. And then also it is used by European Space Agency for their various prediction and forecasting. And then also a lot of insurance company to predict how much your premium should go high. So it was a great job in terms of technology. I was able to work with latest, a lot of satellite data and computer vision and AI, but it was not fulfilling in terms of what I saw is like a lot of insurance company use these tools to predict the premium and then hiking the price. So yeah, I always felt while I was working as a VP of engineer there, always felt that tension of, okay, I'm building something really important for climate risk prediction and climate risk to show people we should really focus on saving our world. Of course, you can go to Mars and other, but hey, we have this world, we should probably
One thing at a time.
yeah. So that was my struggle. And then for me to move to Web3 was also this vision, owning your data, have the privacy that you deserve, and then decentralization. And that was my main motivation to come to Web3. And while I was building, I participated in a bunch of hackathon and then work on different projects. And then I found if you think about software, you always have a front end, you have a back end. In my mind, in the future, the way now I'll talk about the AI. In my mind, the way I see now AI will become the front end, and then the blockchain will become the back end for that AI. Just simple example for just thought experiment. Imagine you have some agents. So AI agents are software that can do some stuff for you. So you give a goal and then they take bunch of steps and on behalf of you and can complete that task for you. So those are called AI agent. Now imagine AI agent cannot open a bank account, but in real world, if you want to do more sophisticated work, you have to spend money. Now imagine you have a AI wallet that works for you and that have a budget that you give and that can spend using crypto, using a wallet. So every agent have a wallet. Now imagine what you can do with those kind of things. Sky
We're
is the
done.
limit.
We are employees to our own creation. It's going to be the gig economy, but AI agents hiring us and firing us. Anyway, I personally like it. But one thing though that I picked up, which it's actually not the most important at all from everything you just mentioned, I really like the description or the initial description of AI agents as software that does what you want it to do. Because an initial challenge that we've had with AI agents is that we anthropomorphize it. We basically give it human features and human characteristics. We give it human names and even all the language that we have available to us. They are an agent who's also an agent, the real estate lady that rented me the apartment and whatever. So I think that has created initial barriers in people's mind to understand how we engage with AI. Because when you give something human features, what you may also be implying, which may or may not be true, maybe you can tell me, is that it has its own interests. It has the human flaws of greed and negligence, that it has maybe at some point the intelligence that is greater than ours, that it could go against us. So I find that to be like an interesting distinction, as in engineers being much more clear and precise in the language of, even though it does use a different tech stack, artificial intelligence, it is still just software. So I think that's one first hurdle that we have to overcome. Ironically, though, or paradoxically, once we overcome the hurdle of letting people know that this software are not humans, so they will still do what we program it to do, the next thing that we do is fucking give them some human-like execution on the blockchain. So that to me is like a mind-blowing timeline. And maybe you can speak more about that, maybe that initial fear or misunderstanding of AI, or how to best think of these agents, especially when we think of agents engaging with each other. But also, what about blockchain makes the whole setup possible or even necessary? What happens if we just have all these crazy agents in the Web2 world?
It's a great question, and we can spend like a next 3 hours on this thing. But I think
We
that
will.
so I think that I'm a big believer of like a first principle. So like you take a bigger problem and reduce it to the unit. If you take this AI concept and then currently more agent or LLM, like a large language model, and then go to in roots. So it is a very simple technology. All AI or LLM does is like it predict the next token. You give it a token, a word or a sentence. It's like a glorified, like a word completion in your iPhone, but it can do it in a much larger scale. So it
But
like a magic.
it does feel like magic, because the leap from the actual, my joke is I'm bilingual and I constantly have to shift between my three languages: Spanish, native, English, second language, and emojis. And to me, the joke is that the bloody keyboards, like it's 2024, it is still not able to realize which language you're speaking in. And it corrects words, whatever. I'm typing in English in Twitter, then I text my mom on WhatsApp in Spanish. If I don't manually change a keyboard, it doesn't realize it's a different language, and it gives me some fucked up suggestions. You know what even happens to me all the time? Sometimes I write something incorrectly, and for whatever reason, it suggests a change. It didn't change it. It adds the incorrect word into its vocabulary. And now it is auto correcting me with incorrect words. So that's when I'm like, fuck it. The machines are never going to take over. And then this fucking Ilya guy at Google writes some paper. No one knows what's going on. And this fucking other Sam guy releases the software, and it is just like decades away from what we have now. So maybe there's a bit of a shock of how much better it is, but I guess that technically it is the same.
Another thing about me is I started working with AI like when it was not that cool. So like Ilya, like many other people, we started very early, like 6, 7 years ago. I think 6 years ago, like I worked in a company where we built a first mental health AI chatbot, and that was able to give people advice around mental health, depression, and anxiety. So
Is that startup still around?
yeah, it's called Wobot.
What's it called?
WOEBOT, Wobot. So it was one of the
Woe as in my woes, my suffering?
WOEBOT. So like a
For woe bot. Okay, maybe it's lost in translation. No, I'm asking because I made it due to the NDC drama.
yeah. So it was like a 6, 7 years ago. Even when there was no Ilya haven't come up with his paper yet, like the attention paper was not there. So we had to build this healthcare chatbot where you have to another interesting thing is you don't see a lot of healthcare AI because like in healthcare, you have to be 99.9% accurate most of the time. There are some like you have to be really accurate. But going back to the conversation, there are a lot of truth about what AI and LLM can do, but there are a lot of hype about it also. And I'm more excited as a builder or developer is like How it will end up is in our hand. We will define whether it's going to be hype or it's going to be really useful and people will be able to use it. So AI or LLM can do a lot of stuff, but it is not a general intelligence. So it doesn't have a way of thinking. So it's more like it's a garbage in, garbage out. So if someone train a LLM model with bad data, the output result will be a bad AI model that will do bad stuff. So this is where also the blockchain comes into the picture. Imagine currently the biggest model is from OpenAI, so GPT-4, and then the second compared to a open source model from Llama 2 from Meta, the difference between how good it is huge. But and probably 90% of the AI company today, it can be more, but they're using one way or other OpenAI GPT-4 or one of their model. Problem with that is we have no idea about what kind of data they use to train that model. So it's not transparent. We have no way to go back and audit if the AI model make a classification or a decision, what were the reason and what was the data or insight it used. There is no transparency. There is no data lineage to see I make this decision, but for this reason. So this is where I think in the future blockchain will play a really important role. But I think before it play an important role in that kind of prediction and kind of accuracy of the prediction or the transparency of AI model, we probably need one or two more innovation in web3, especially with ZK technology or performance of the blockchain. So that's how I see AI will make the web3 more transparent in the future. But right now, I don't really feel it's feasible or economically feasible to build that kind of system yet. But I'm pretty sure in few years from now, you will see a lot more activity.
I think it's going to be what we mentioned before. At what point does it go from being a consumer application and something fun that gives you whatever gym workouts or paleo diets, whatever? At what point does it become core infrastructure? Once everything is powered by AI, we're going to have problems because there's no contingencies. I think this is a good conversation because I usually come at it from the more legal human side of things and you actually understand how it works. I think that a way to summarize this issue that we have around data provenance would be the first one is how do we ascertain that the data is real? Now, if I'm an insurance company and you're giving me a bunch of conclusions or assumptions based on data, how do I know that the data comes from the actual property I'm asking you about? So that's one big question. The second one is when we're looking at the training, who decides what data is good and what data is not good? I know that there's been in the past a lot of confirmation bias, even in the scientific papers. Sometimes when the outcome is not what they expect, they assume that there was an error or some like an outlier in the testing. So they disregarded and they may try again to get the right outcome or maybe just not say anything. So there's always questions as to who's qualified or in the best position to do it. But then the last one, which is the most interesting one, and to quote Matt Lockyer again, that's twice in a podcast. Let's see if we can break a record today. Matt Lockyer was like, yeah, nah, I think that AI is actually the end of human progress because we're no longer creating the data that is needed to fit these models. The model can give you any bullshit you ask in 100 different ways, but it's not growing its data set. And the concern or the big question that maybe you can comment on is, should we or can we use synthetic data to feed it back into the model? And by synthetic data, information that the AI itself generates. It wasn't you, it wasn't me, it was something that AI said based on what you and I said.
The quick answer is yes. And you need that. So the data, first of all, I'm not 100% agree with the statement of this is the end of our creativity. So
I took some liberty with the quote. That's not his exact statement, but you can see what he was alluding to, that we still need
yeah,
people to think.
that's a fair question. Last week I was in a panel in an AI conference, so similar kind of question comes in. I think that was a developer conference, and someone asked me, like, do you think we will beat developer in the future because the copilot are becoming so much better? And do we need a developer? Then my answer was, we don't need developer who will not use the AI, but I think the people or the developer who use the AI and will become 10x more productive, it will be possible to replace them. But the people who are not going to take the advantage, probably they will become irrelevant. So I believe like a AI will make us more creative. So imagine like I always consider myself a backend engineer. So AI, like building models. But now if I want to put something for public to use, I can just go and write a prompt that create a UI for my backend. And then in an hour or two, I can become a full stack developer. If I want to build a business, I'll probably write bunch of prompt and then instruct the AI model to build a Shopify store and then maybe make a listing of t-shirt and then writing automatically those description and start selling. So it will make people more productive. So now the question of where I'm afraid in a place where it will also create this gap, huge gap, because there is a significant number of population in the world. Probably they will get less opportunity to use this kind of large language model or sophisticated AI, and that will kind of create this huge gap where people with AI will become 100 times more productive and produce a lot more stuff than people who don't have the AI and cannot use the AI. So that's kind of a answer for the last question. I think you had another question about.
There's been many points in this podcast, and I hope that listeners are caffeinated or the substance of their choice, where we see it glass half full, glass half empty. Like we're coming at it from the same thing. When you mentioned the insurance company, I thought you would feel great because you were saving people's houses, or you could have an impact at that individual level, but you were coming at it from more like the resistance to helping the middleman extract more value, which I thought was interesting. It was not the initial thing that I thought of. Now, with the impact of AI, it's interesting that you're coming at it from like that end user and everyone having access to it. And now I'm on like a step before of just a potential unleashes for the people that do have access. So it's interesting that obviously we have very walks of life and experience, but it's good to listen to the different perspectives because in my mind, the endless loop, sometimes I don't think of that next layer up or down.
Absolutely. For the insurance side, my problem was they use those kind of data to decide whether you should be able to get insurance. For example, like some places in California, you cannot get fire insurance because there is a 60-70% likelihood that like in a year, every other year, there will be a fire that might burn your house. So like I don't.
But out of curiosity, so at this stage where you see the AI to determine the likelihood of a natural disaster occurring or other things that may threaten property or valuable assets, and then the insurance company in a traditional model with a greedy human optimizing shareholder value, they decide whether to insure. I'm trying to play devil's advocate here and ask, like, is it rational or is it the right thing to do? Should they have insured anyway, maybe with the ignorance of the house burning down and maybe incurring a loss or the loss being distributed across many other people? And I'll put it, just take it to the next level. If we had a full stack AI decision maker, do you think that the AI would put prices up, keep them the same, insure, not insure? Because I do think that the solution is always technology. It's just that we're deploying like one thing at a time and then encountering the legacy systems around it. So I'm curious if the solution is to keep doubling down or
After working in technology for many years, my view nowadays is like a solution is not always the technology might be a way up to that solution. So I mentioned about the insurance side, but there is another public good project that I support. I co-founded a kind of a nonprofit for this satellite or using satellite to do a lot of like how can I still get involved and that I want to keep my knowledge in satellite and space tech. So I help bunch of scientists from US and Bangladesh, I'm originally from Bangladesh. We have a lot of mangrove trees. One of the thing probably not many people know that a lot of people talk about carbon offsetting and stuff, but like a mangrove tree, it's a very small tree, but they are one of the tree that can keep a lot of carbon together. So now I'm helping them to from satellite image, what are the places you should plant those trees, and that will save your coastal line and then also keep a lot of carbon under the ground or in the biomass. So there are a lot of interesting good use case for AI, and it will be up to us where we want to use it. And at the end, I have no problem with like a company making a lot of money, and they does like a how imagine like a when was the last time I had a fire in my house? Probably never, but I still pay for earthquake fire.
I hope so. You would remember, right?
Yeah. But the reason for that is I'm paying for that and I'm happy to pay for that. But then there are places where there is a possibility for fire or earthquake, and then insurance company just decide to make profit. And when it comes to offsetting some of that profit, they'll just decide not to do it. So that's to me, it's not necessarily fair, but I don't have problem with company making profit, but also have to be balanced. Like you should not be able to just decide government can come in, other people can come in. That's one thing. But also like in other side, the same technology you could use as a house owner. I know that there is a project in California, where from your satellite images, if you give your address, it create a boundary and it create like a tree zone where you should trim your trees because most of the fire happen because you are too close to the forest or like there are a lot of things that you can do. And this AI system give you idea of, okay, so you should plant this kind of tree in 100 yards of your house, or this kind of tree you should cut. So there are technology that can help. So at the end of the day, as a person or as a technologist, we have to decide.
Those two examples, which I really capture the dance between the humans having the growth mindset to find ways to use the technology to serve them. And I think it goes back to that main point that we started with. These are agents, and the technology will do what we tell it to do. So if we're not evil, it can be a net positive. If we're deranged, it could be negative. Reminds me of in Australia, there is a type of tree. I don't remember the name, but the problem is that when there are bushfires, this tree, when it warms up and it starts burning, it explodes. And that is a massive component for the fire spreading. So there's this dynamic. I'm not a house owner, not in regional Australia either, but there was this really interesting dynamic where a lot of people, when there's a bushfire coming and there's a warning, the warning is leave now or stay. And there's no in between. There's a window where you can travel otherwise. And a lot of people choose to stay because the logic is that the fire may be passing whatever 250 meters away from your house. But because of these exploding ambers, that's what makes it expand. So if it's not like mega serious, a lot of people choose to stay or one person stays behind and then try to guard for these ambers. And yeah, I'm thinking of the waves of people arriving in Australia and these houses being built. Dude, I don't think we fucking knew that this sky was blue back in the day, that the technology has advanced so much. So I can totally see how satellites would give you an entire new layer of understanding, even just like visualizing things from above. Interesting.
Imagine you can train a model to learn about those trees, and then from satellite, then you can find the house, and then you can find that those trees, and and probably you can do some math of if it explode, if there is this kind of, you can create a lot of simulation and then whether it will affect or not. There are a lot of things can be done.
The simulation be all digital, or we have to go out there and start burning shit down?
No, it can be it can be all digital. So you can have data of all the trees, and then you can push if it is 60 mile per hour wind and from this direction and your house. So some of the work we did, just to give you some idea. So if there is a high wind from north side of a house and your roof type is, I don't know, like a certain type, and then what is the likelihood of your roof blown by this air? So you can calculate all those things. If you live in a coastal area in Miami, you don't have to predict if I buy a beach house, in 30 years, there will be probably water in your house. You can already do this kind of simulation, and not European Space Agency, I don't know about NASA, have a lot of those simulation model that can be used, especially for flash flood and water. So a lot of things can be done.
I guess things are not as bad as they seem, because Barcelona is booming. There's a bunch of amazing new buildings all being sold to foreigners. I'm curious, when it comes to like gap created by technology, a lot of people focus on obviously like an income gap and technology not being, the opportunities from technology not being distributed evenly. But as I travel, I'm often mindful of, it's not just the opportunity to generate a living through the new industries that technology creates. It's actually even the opportunity to yield the benefit of the products. But I'll put the question to you directly. It sounds like groundbreaking technology available to residents in California. It is a high risk area due to bushfires historically, but I guess it's also very expensive property. Is this technology available now to people in other regions? What is the price point looking like? Is it something that, we can get started in Australia now? I think there's a business here.
So I don't know if it is available for everyone, really. So it is mostly available as far I know. So I used to work for a company called SciStellar. We did not have anything in US, but because in that domain I work, I knew a lot of companies. So right now, I think some of the fire department in California use that technology. I don't think it's available for everyone. This is where when I worked at SciStellar, one of our vision was to make it available for everyone. So imagine in the future, I can see so those kind of project, the bigger challenge is the data and aggregating and kind of computation. I'll be not surprised if someday you build that kind of product and kind of for public good or DAO or something around it. I don't know a lot about DAO, but the answer your question, short answer is normally these kind of tools are only available for government and big insurance company today, not for everyone because it's not expensive. It can be done, but because only few company knows how to build it, and it's more profitable to.
Does it currently have any type of restriction categorization, like military use or something? You can't be exported, or you need a license to be able to deal in it? Or is it just that it's expensive and there's little people working on it?
I think it's just those company don't serve consumer product. Most of their product are for other enterprise. So that's the problem. And for satellite images specifically, you have restriction of a less than 5 millimeter. If you want to get an image 5 millimeter, less than 5 millimeter resolution, then it's you cannot get it from US satellite. Of course, you can always get from Chinese satellite and other satellite that will sell you happily those data. But yeah, less than 5 millimeter, I think it's only for military use.
My people will contact your people and we'll get some Chinese satellites flying over Australia.
Oh, by the way, that's another realization when I was working on that project. People used to think you need really high resolution, expensive data. But some of the work that I did and where I learned, you can use public data set, like a European Space Agency, their data, all the satellite data are open, and those are a 30 millimeter resolution. And you can train a model that can work on that kind of data. So people used to think, oh, we need high resolution data to do machine learning. But nowadays, like machine learning or the model are becoming so good that it can do. And coming now, I will answer your question about the synthetic data. So you asked me like whether synthetic data is useful or not. When I was working with satellite data, one of the problem is satellite take images like based on which satellite you want, like it takes images every day or week, or that's how. And sometimes you don't get clear images for every day. So the number of data are limited. So let's say last 10 years. So number of images are limited. So what you can do is you can take those images and produce synthetic data. So there are a lot of different techniques to produce synthetic data.
But is that synthetic data like backwards or forward? Or does it make a difference?
No. So you take an image, then you rotate. So the way AI learn for images, it's very simple. So it's like imagine read of all these colors. And then that's how it detects the edges of your face or your glass or a house in a satellite images. Now, the model you want to train for, let's say we are building a model that detect the rooftop from satellite image. Then images, depending on what was the angle of the satellite, can come out from the north or south or from straight. But these are three different images, right? But when you get an image, you probably get one. Then what do you want to do? You want to write another kind of program that rotate the images in 35-degree angle, 60-degree angle, and then produce different data. Maybe flip the images, maybe it remove some color. So all you want to do is your AI, give them a lot of data to understand the pattern. So that's how synthetic data become really useful, because at the end,
I don't know if there's like a slight nuance here, but like in my mind, I almost see two categories. The first would be you have limited data. Say there's only one photo, but you want to be able to see, 360, 3D the house. You technically still have real data in the sense that I would imagine you have the photo, but you can also feed to it the dimensions of the house or like the materials. I guess there's like additional real world data that can be given to help generate the model. I think that's amazing and definitely useful, but I think it's different from, say, imagine a model where there's a field in the real world without houses and the model just built houses and then it modeled shit on houses that don't exist. Maybe we don't even have any weather data. We just imagined what the weather may be in that area. And you can see how it just starts compiling to the point where you're like, why are there hurricanes in Ottawa? There's never been a hurricane in Ottawa. I don't know. The model just projected some shit from who knows where.
Yeah, if you remember, I mentioned like one thing, like a garbage in, garbage out. So in AI or data platform, it's like always garbage in, garbage out. If you put like those kind of data, that's like there's no reality in that data. So in my mind, synthetic data does not mean you made up the data. It's mean you slightly change the data. So like, let's say if you are designing a large language model, like LLM, so you don't want to just put garbage, like some gibberish and then put like something. You probably say like oh, I like your podcast. I'm a fan of your podcast, or I am fascinated for that podcast. Just for example. So we are saying the same thing, but three different ways. So if you have a customer data who said this thing one way, you can probably simulate and generate data for others. But if you scramble a bunch of words, that will be garbage data. And then the model that you'll get, it will be garbage. So in my mind, synthetic data meaning like when you have a limited number of data and then you augment that data, then that's what happens. So a famous example is Microsoft open source, a large language model. It's called Phi2, PHI2. And then it's a very small model. Like I think it's 1 billion parameter or something like that, or 1 or 7 billion parameter. But it was able to output as good as GPT 3.5, which is 40 or 60 million parameter. The reason it was able to do that good is Phi2 was trained on synthetic data that was generated from GPT-4. So that means it has a lot more example and good example. So that's how it was able to produce great data. So imagine.
I guess it comes down to the labeling, like what's good data, what's bad data. Because I'm thinking, for example, somebody says, hey, using GPT, write me a Steve Jobs speech. So it will have his background, mannerisms, etc. But he is talking about the 2024 election and he's taking a particular stance. It'd be weird if this prompted content then gets fed back into the legacy of the person, because before you know it, in 2030, they're going to think that Steve Jobs was a X when it was synthetic data created by an individual. But I guess that the people like yourself know what you're doing. We don't have to keep indulging in my weird examples. There's a few other things that you want to ask you as well.
Yeah.
Yes. You may have heard me mention that I grew up in Venezuela and I live in Australia. So I think it's a gift to have the best of both worlds. You see some things that work, some things that don't, and that shared human thread of people are the same, but also different. And so I'm really curious, when did you arrive in the US and how much that experience coming from Bangladesh you feel has shaped your pursuit in AI, in blockchain, in anything else that you may be doing that you haven't told us? The satellites was a surprise to me.
Yeah. So I grew up in Bangladesh and then I did my bachelor. And then I was working in a software company for 2 years there. But then I thought, yeah, I want to learn more. There must be more than just building software in Bangladesh. So I went to Sweden for doing my master's. So I did my master's in Sweden. And then
Why Sweden? Out of all places.
Right. So there are a few different reasons. So first, I applied in UK and Germany and Sweden. UK, I really the Queen's College of London because they're really good in some of the software engineering work, but it was expensive. I got a scholarship, half scholarship, but it was still expensive for me because Bangladesh, I'm a middle class, come from middle class or home, it was expensive. Then Sweden, the reason is I like the culture and I like the people, and it was full scholarship. So I did not have to pay anything. So
I like the people that give me full scholarship. It's a great culture of education.
and I was really lucky to study in one of the university, Lidköping University, which was renowned for computer science department, and they did not disappoint me. Learn a lot, but one thing I tell everyone whenever people ask, what did you learn in your master's in Sweden? The thing that I tell them is I learned how to learn. That's all I learned. Rest of the thing, programming, nowadays I tell people don't go to university for learning a hard skill. Probably university will give you a lot of this soft, interesting skill that you can write code all day, but you'll never be able to learn. So, but then I work in Sweden for 2 years, but during my master's, I went to Germany for 1 year and then work in Germany for 1 year in one of the largest German company called SAP. So it was my first experience working in a Google kind of scale company in Europe. But then after that experience, I decided I don't want to work in a bigger company. My goal is to build a startup. Then I also started a startup with my professor in Sweden, but then I met my ex-wife and then we decided to move to US. And right now I'm it's my 8 years in US now. In US, I worked in several different companies, but the last 3 years, I was working with my co-founder, but then he started this satellite company based in Lidköping. So that satellite company that I just mentioned, I started working with Peter, and then and by the way, he was one of my mentor and my professor. So I love working with him. And if I would not do Jutsu, probably still work for him and want to work with him. He's a great person. And then, so those experiences with AI led me to, I was working in AI, but also interested in Web3 and participating in hackathon. And that my introduction to Near was from a hackathon.
I was about to ask you, like,
Three,
where did Cameron and Near enter the picture?
yeah. So I think 3 years ago, there was I think ETH. So in ETH, so I went to that time I had no idea about any blockchain. So I was still working at Stellar, and then I went there and to explore, hey, let's build this something in 3 days. Always fascinated me. Then I talked with all these different protocol and companies, and then I was like, you probably can tell, I'm very interested in climate risk and climate solution technology. And Near was when I talked with Near about with Cameron, and there was another person, I forget the
Maybe
name.
Peter or Michael Ozymandias.
No, I think it's the Pagoda Devrel. What is his name? He had a podcast or something, like a YouTube video, like a
Yeah,
Dorian.
the Dorian. Yeah.
Dorian. Yes. He was great. So, and then they were able to show me the technology and how much they are interested in like a net zero thing. So then it interested me, and then I built a project there. It was calculating carbon footprint for every single transaction in the air, but unfortunately, no one used it.
We don't want to know that either.
Yeah. Like I know Near uses a third-party company, but I was able to calculate every single transaction, how much it will produce carbon, and then how much it will take to offset. So that, and then I showed in the wallet, and then this project win like 6 different prize in the ETH, and it win the first prize. So that was my entry to Near, and then I start running a lot of meetups in SF because I like to share. I'm a big believer of learning in public, so I learn more when I share. The philosophy is if you want to learn something, read it. If you want to understand something, write about it. If you want to master something, teach it to others. So that's the learning that I believe. So that's why I always, whatever I'm learning nowadays, spending a lot of time with LLM and AI. So I try to go and speak about it and teach people about it because I believe that's the best way to learn. So that's where it is. And now with Jutsu, my goal is to combine these two fields that I spend most of my life in AI and Web3 and make it super simple for everyone. So one of the things really fascinated me is, do you know how many web developers are today, roughly?
It's a surprisingly small number,
Let's look.
80,000 or something.
There are 13 million web developers,
I was off a little bit.
but there are only 20,000 Web3 developers. So you can see the
Oh,
gap,
okay.
13 million and 20,000. So my goal, or if I can build something or make it smoother for at least, let's say, 5% of that web developer into Web3 and make the transition really smooth, where they don't have to worry about all these things in upfront, all this decentralization, chain abstraction, and all these things upfront. I think that will be the life works. If I can bring at least 5 web developer to Web3 and make the Web3 developer, let's say 500,000 or a million web developer in next 5 years, that's a big win for me.
I have to confess, I am in the content creation side, marketing side, just growth. But even though I get really excited and I think it's very bullish that we have all these narratives around chain abstraction and etc., I've come across some great ideas and I literally don't know where to start. And I tried to onboard some devs and I was like, hey, I've got this great idea. I reckon we can build them near. Can you help me? And they're like, where do we start? Like, I don't know. Is there really that much of a difference between being a Web3 developer and being a Web2 developer? Or is it the same as being like a DeFi developer or working for whatever, a supermarket company? Like, how much is the gap really?
Yeah, I think I am probably a great position to answer this thing because I spent probably 13 years in Web2 and last 2, 3 years in Web3. So I think the bigger gap is, I know this will upset a lot of Web3 developer. Sometimes as a Web3 developer, they feel really, I don't know if it is like a smartness or what it is, but they feel like like people should build stuff in hardware. Oh, like you have to install 100 different tools in local. That's how it is, how it works. But coming from web 2, where if you are building a website, you are probably running one command that deploy your app in Vercel or S3 or somewhere where you don't have to worry about 100 different things. Be coming from web 2, where if you want to integrate a payment platform in your website, it's just a 5 line of code. Stripe, add the Stripe in a bunch of places. You are up and running, selling your stuff. Imagine if you want to add a payment system in your Web3 payment system, probably it take a lot more work. So do I think it cannot be done? I think it is absolutely can be done. I feel like more and more people in Web3 was focusing on kind of infrastructure and kind of, I'll give you another analogy. So before Jutsu went through an incubator called Orange DAO. So it's a Web3 incubator. Like I think it's one of the best Web3.
They're like a YC spin-off or affiliated.
You are absolutely right. So they are run by YC founders, and they wanted to have incubator that 100% focus on Web3 projects. So that's that. But the thing I want to say is, before Orange DAO, I always felt uncomfortable or never thought about it. So I always thought about, okay, I will build a project and it will be used by a lot of people. But the first thing they ask, or one of the first thing they ask is, okay, how do you make money? Like, wow. So that's
Pretty good question to ask, actually.
Yeah, but that triggers a different side of my brain where, okay, so I have to build a product, but I also have to build a product that makes money. So same in Web3 developer. So they think, okay, we have to build an infrastructure and that's important. And if I don't build it, you don't have any choices, right? Because you have to use this ABC infrastructure. But when we will change our mindset from that to like a no, we have to also build a experience. We also have to build a platform for developer where developer will love, and it will give as good as experience in any other Web2 competition. Until then, it will be very difficult to convince. And
Look, there's two big challenges in Web3. The first one is, by the nature of everything being decentralized and open source, the business models are fundamentally different if they exist. And this is where I often have issues with, like, things start getting very, I want to say communist, but it's very collectivist. And traditionally, this has never worked. And maybe Web3 finds a way to make it work in some post-loop like instances. But as a rule of thumb, it's just very hard to build things without funding, without money coming in, without a clear chain of command. And yeah. But the second problem in Web3, which is slightly related, is the groupthink. The smaller communities, the sense of belonging, everyone likes to be talking about the same thing in Twitter at the same time. And sometimes I do feel like we need more of that contrarian approach, which is not really contrarian. My question to you would be, how much of what you're doing would you say it's like revolutionary, or how much of what you're doing is applying Bay Area and 15 years of experience as a professional to a new product in a new category? Are you like the mad genius, or is Web3 just lacking that structure and that product?
Yeah. So I don't feel I'm a genius, and I don't feel like I want to be viewed as a genius, because one of the problem you'll find, like, there are people with like more than 150 or 60 IQ, but they are doing strange thing like that, but not using that for public good. If we talk about public good, so we have to think about public. You mentioned about funding. Yes, funding, every project needs funding, but that important question also have to be there. Project versus product. So today, most of the Web3 are project. That's interesting. People will use it. And if you think about it, most of the project we build, if you build a project for a specific group, but you also, like when Ilya or Raj from Solana ecosystem, like a founder of Solana, when they talk about next billion people, and those next billion people are not going to be crypto native people. So they are not going to be this. So as a developer or as a builder, if we don't upgrade our mindset of, okay, now we are playing in an NFL, so like a big league, we have to compete with Web2. So that means we have to upgrade our mindset to what are the features, what are things we need to do to bring next billion people.
You nailed it. Look, project and product makes it very clear. Like to me, a project is we get together, we do something, we may share on social media, lives forever, the world can see it, we may share our itinerary, other people can replicate it. A product is a tour agency. You pay me and I give you the car, somebody guides you around, I give you food, and then I send you home. That's the structure that I feel like we're missing. And you know how I know that we're miles away from being able to compete with Web2? The value framework that we have right now, it's just nonsensical. People think that the fees that users pay to Ethereum and they think that a blockchain can be successful just by how much you're paying gas fees. That to me would be like saying, hey, how successful is your project based on how many fees you pay to AWS? How much you pay to AWS is irrelevant. That is an expense. The value creation comes at the product layer. Like, how do these products create and capture value both in like dollar terms? The product has a valuation and it can generate cash flow ideally, but also how does it create value to the user? Because I can tell you, I'm a user and I've paid thousands in fucking gas fees. I'm offended that some people think that's revenue and that's success. That to me is a shit product that we have to improve or it's not going to grow. We're wasting our time thinking we're going to get a billion users when it costs me $30 to do a USDT transaction. That's
I 100% agree with you, but this is where I feel like it might be sooner than you think, where we will compete with Web2. This is the reason why. There are,
we have to. And I'll tell you the last thing why I get a little bit aggressive with this rant. The incentives are inverse. The modern blockchains like Solana, Near, Sui, where you have super cheap transactions, are being made fun of because they're not generating enough money in fees. Because what? We don't fucking need to. What we need is a price point where many people can create many products, and that's where the value comes from. Then we can have arguments about how we secure the network and how the sustainability at a different implementation. But it's just weird that us solving the problem of making it accessible and scalable to be able to create that next wave of applications is being used against us because the old horse that is super expensive and eats a lot and shits a lot, they're using the magic of how much the horse farts or whatever. That's a weird example, but you know what I mean.
if we want to become mainstream, like a Web3, uh, want to become mainstream, the first thing we have to do is uh, abstract out the Web3, like a crypto or Web3 part, and make it such a way that it doesn't matter really. So like a Web3 it is best for storage of value. And then if we can combine it with creation of value and then abstract it such a way that it doesn't matter. If you are probably from 100 years from now, people will still buy stuff online. Is it buying through crypto or bank account? Does it matter? If you can just do it easily, probably not. I'll give you another interesting, the thing that I always think about. Imagine the App Store. Imagine the iPhone. So when iPhone came out, there was not really a lot of kind of differentiation from any other phone. So iPhone took it to the next level.
I remember holding an iPhone in my hands the very first. I opened the box. I peeled the plastic. There was an image of the earth with, I guess, the sun or some shining light around it. It didn't matter that there was nothing to do on the fucking phone. The design, it was so sleek and just every detail. And in hindsight, sure, there wasn't that much to do. That's, I think, the standard that we got to aim for. Even if there's not much to do, we always give it 110%. It has to be excellent today, and it will be better in 10 days or 10 years, and it will look ridiculous in hindsight. But dude, the iPhone was a massive leap compared to a Nokia. Dude, side by side, Nokia and an iPhone at the same time. That's crazy.
Yeah. My point of saying that was definitely anything. Even
Steve Jobs just died again.
no, I think okay. What I'm going to say probably he'll probably enjoy. Phone or Apple is a company that we now expect that kind of quality from them. Like a Vision Pro, like a Meta have a glass that costs 300, and that Vision Pro come up with a glass with $4,000. I'm probably going to buy it. Vision Pro. I did not buy the 300. Just for example, like how the
If you
quality.
buy it, I want to test yours when I visit San Francisco. It's out of my budget, but I'm so intrigued by this completely new category of technology.
Yeah. I tested in one of the AI conference when I was like last week. But like the thing that let's going back to our conversation. The biggest kind of exponential shift in iPhone was the App Store being able for anyone to build an app and then make it available for anyone to use it. And then instead of going to a website or doing a bunch of things, this small thing that it give you a fulfilled experience and the convenience. So I think when they open up that, then it created these millions and millions of apps. That was one of the kind of turning point for Apple. They could just keep this thing in-house. And then if you remember Nokia, like they used to have just their apps. People can install some games, but it was not like easy. So that's one thing and before they open up the app store, they created a really good, decent developer experience and a incentive structure that people can use. So I think if we want to be we cannot complain I don't want to complain oh, we don't have why Web3 have only 2,000, 20,000 developer. I think one of the big challenges, I spend a lot of time thinking about what brings a developer to an ecosystem. I think one of the first thing is you have to be able to show the value. If you spend your time, come to this ecosystem, and this is how you will be incentivized. You'll get a job, you'll make money. Imagine any platform, think of the most simplest one will be not simplest, but clear one will be Salesforce. So it's a CRM platform. It's nothing special about it. But there are a lot of developer. I think Salesforce probably have more developer in their ecosystem than whole crypto, because you can go to.
Just to clarify, you mean Salesforce, not the developer creating the product, but the developers in the ecosystem that leverage the Salesforce suite to then create custom solutions. Is that correct?
Yes, Salesforce have a marketplace, or you can build a Salesforce app. So, and then it's not just they're building apps, but now you will see people are hiring this kind of people, like an engineer. And then if you are a Salesforce, they call it Salesforce developer. They have a program and all that whole stuff. But if you go there, you know that, okay, at the end of the day, you probably going to work in a big enterprise, manage their Salesforce thing, or you'll work in a third-party company that build apps for Salesforce. And you have a kind of a way to, and if you put a Salesforce app, if other people use it, you can get the benefit. But that's thing is like a kind of a missing in many cases in Web3, because Web3, we build product that people use, they extract value, but then it is hard for the builder to extract the value. Your conversation about infrastructure versus if it is a product, I think we have to add more and more kind of a product mindset when we are building.
That's why you guys are the holy grail, because you are technically core infrastructure. I'd put it there early enough, but it is the type of early infrastructure that understands that shit is not going to build itself. So it's look, at least what I perceive from the conversation, you guys are aware of the things that are not technically part of the product, but that are inherently part of the product, if that makes sense. And that would be the developers that are going to use it. So for you, it's not just the performance of the IDE or it looking pretty. you can almost measure the success of your product, but how many products it is creating.
That you are absolutely right. So one of our internal dashboard is how many component people are deploying, not like how many people are using or like those kind of things. So our North Star metrics is people use and then build an app or build a component. So that's our.
And I would imagine that these metrics can obviously change over time. Look, you're right. In my excitement of reminiscing me opening that first Apple box that I think I did a dopamine detox after that day. You're right. I didn't remember that the Apple Store, the App Store dropped later. Do you know what the gap was between the release of the first phone and the App Store? Because I don't think it was that long.
No, I think it was like a 6 month or 1 year or something like that. I'm not 100% sure.
And the other thing that you nailed, see, this is why it pays off to get the engineers. The thing that you nailed is the iPhone as a distribution channel, but understanding that it's not just a phone, it's like the app store itself. And we could probably look into maybe some of the quality reassurance that they have there or some of the standards that they impose on applications. But the real key that is missing, and that it's probably important for the Web3 world now, is the developer toolkit. Dude, I always joked that Apple and Google are evil geniuses because they created these like applications, the iPad and stuff, for children to start coding using their languages. So it's like you don't even have to worry about teaching people. Like you get them young, indoctrinate them, and they'll be forting and building apps, and like the world is just very different by then.
This is what we are doing. We start going to university and talking to a first semester or like a second semester student. So by the time the goal is like in my mind, develop a tool. You want to start really early in the university. They will start building the assignment, and then when they will go to a company, and then what tool they'll ask their employee to install. So the tool they are experienced with, right? So that's
Is
something
this
we are
your
doing.
is this your genius? Wink, wink. Not a genius, or is this like you having learned from the big case studies of Silicon Valley? And I asked because this was Slack's business model. Slack approach was we'll go grassroots, smaller groups of people, and then the product's really good. And there became a point where there were so many people using it that the company had just to buy a license for everyone and officially migrate to it. It is a model that makes it easier to sell when the product is actually good. Like basically to me, it says, give me a chance. Like you as an individual, if you actually try it, you'll like it. And there's networks effects, which is fascinating because normally when you think of a network effect, you think of a social app. But actually, the strongest network effects are tooling. Dude, you use what your colleagues use. And most of these things spread by word of mouth. Like there has to be that trust. So yeah, you're into something here.
So I would say we are going to go to on this university. Banyan is helping us with some of their partnership. DevHub, they have a campus program that we also want to participate. We are already partnering with Hackbox to build a hackathon experience. The goal for their milestone is, or North Star metric is, in 1 hour, people should be able to learn and build and deploy their first component. Don't need the document and all the other stuff. Everything should be there. And then when they become expert, they can do other stuff. That's one thing. And regarding the other statement, I think that there are a few companies or there are a few philosophy that I really try to utilize, if possible, whatever we are building. So one of them is Apple mindset. So Apple, you don't have to tell Apple to make your iPhone safe or secure or private because that's their they are doing everything. At least I know I don't know how
Some sometimes they need reminders, but
But imagine they do a lot of this. They are the first company to block those third party cookies, and now Google and other people are catching up. So what I'm trying to say is there is a lot of discussion in the Bay Area. I don't know. I think it's everywhere probably. The convenience versus privacy. Yeah, a lot of people said, oh, people will give up their privacy for convenience. But if you think about how Apple is doing, or at least we can do, at least our philosophy is, you can have a privacy with convenience anything we build in the future, it will be primary focus will be how do we make it so simple for everyone, but also not sacrificing the privacy that we need. So is it easy? Probably not. But is it doable? Absolutely. So we can make things safe, but also make things beautiful. And like the experience that you mentioned about iPhone, you remember, like you even forget today that there was no app store when they started the iPhone. So that's the static part of it. So because people trust that company or that company also thinks so much about their user, and then they make such a beautiful product that people forget sometimes.
These may be dating me. I've started lying about my age. At that point in time, Apple was not the dominant technology player in 2008. When I bought my first Apple, like the iMac, the little MacBook, white one, I was the weird one, the crazy one. And guess what? At the time, that was the Apple philosophy that I was attracted to. I heard that their market was like 7% or 21%. It was like a tiny market, but it was like creative people, designers, video producers. It was people that wanted a purpose-built computer for doing something else. But back in my day, I had to spend a shit ton of money buying Microsoft Office as a separate software. And over time, as compatibility increased, and I just realized that there may be a lesson in history here for us. Dude, once Macs became fully compatible with the Microsoft suite and the internet further, equalized everything through Google Docs and stuff, they took over. I really couldn't explain it to you technically, but they look beautiful, they feel beautiful, you feel special, and they just work better. I've never had viruses. I usually just buy a new computer and give my old one to my parents or my sister. Dude, my dad still has that white Mac. He can turn it on.
Does it still work? Yeah.
You can't you'd have to update some of the RAM or something. The software is too heavy now.
What is the philosophy we can learn from that?
So the two big lessons would be, the first one is, even if it is not popular, you have to stand for something. Who are the first 100 people you want to attract? Because by yourself, you're dead anyway. Stand for something. And I think that Web3, we got distracted either building core infra or trading shit coins or flipping NFTs or just like scamming each other. We need a philosophy. Privacy, owning your assets. We can make it simple for the end user. But even as you question, like, how do we attract developers? I think that there's talent out there that would be attracted for a different way of doing things. But the second one is the interoperability. And that's where maybe the chain abstraction gets crazy, because I've heard some examples from Ilya that right now it's like the old mobile carrier days where you could only send a text message to like people within your network. That sounds insane today. So I think that the abstraction of these barriers and technologies will really change that. I would like it to comment on it, but for the sake of time, I'll combine with the beautiful premise. This is truly poetic that I wrote it here. So we've got chain abstraction, just removing the friction from using blockchains and the tribalism from having to choose which network you want to be on. But I feel like Jutsu is also abstracting like the building experience. So I'd be really curious if you could comment on both how chain abstraction may change the landscape or accelerate the adoption of the technology, but also how Jutsu is itself trying to, at the developer level, just unleash application creation. Let's even have a crazy prediction. If I help you commit myself on this podcast to get Jutsu in the hands of every developer, every near campus partner around the world, etc., how many decent applications can we have on near around the world by the end of the year?
I think that's a great, like a big question. Just before I answer that one, like right now, most of the people that are working in Jutsu is the people who either use that in their hackathon or something, and that they like it so much, they reach out to me, and then that's how some of them are. So we really care about who are using, and you probably notice, or people probably know, like I'm opinionated about making it so simple for some people say like, why don't we have a VS Code extension today? My philosophy is, yeah, that's a great groups, but I want to bring the rest of the developer. Like there are probably 100 developer who are really expert in Rust or JavaScript or TypeScript, and they'll probably figure it out. My goal is to make it easy for everyone. So now about the chain abstraction.
Because at the moment, there is a near VS Code extension.
Yes. There
Does
are
it work?
several.
What does it do? What
The VS Code extension, the one, I think one is called Boss Loader and one is called Boss Workspace or something like that. So the way it works is like you can run a command that create a project locally, and then you can pull the component from testnet or mainnet, and then you can deploy it, which is great if you already know how to work with all these different tools and then all the CLI, and then you want to back and forth switch to see like how it looks in different gateway. So that's a great tool for if someone want to start, someone who have a large project and want already know VS Code. So for them, it's a great tool. This is why we are opinionated. Like we are focusing on the people who might not have that experience. I am a big believer of micro moments, or what is it called in English? Like a micro delight, or so we want to delight people in what is it called?
it's a very Bay Area. The Twitter guy calls it like magic moments, and you can actually measure how many touch points till you hit that aha moment and you become
We
an
want to
engaged user.
I think Google have this thing. I think they call it micro delight or something like that. So in product, in different points, you want this aha moment. So you want to delight users. So in my mind, we want to delight people very early, because like I volunteer teaching people programming for many years in the Bay Area. One thing I learned is if people like don't have this small win in the early, they give up. They don't come and they don't learn programming. But if you can put this small dopamine and give them this delight, so that's how it works. So I want to focus on like a rest of the developer, not like a experience in the
The
future.
only feedback that I would give, because I've had the joy of being a lifelong learner, I keep changing industries in what I do with a certain degree of frequency. There's a lot of platforms. If you look at a standard, let's call it Silicon Valley startup, there's a product handbook, best practices. They've become very good at building these magic moments where something that makes the user feel a little bit excited or special. But they've built it at like the interface level. So for instance, I finish purchasing something and my product is delivered as little flags and rainbows, whatever, fucking balloons. But what's much harder, because not everyone has the empathy and it's very hard to quantify, is a subjective magic moment that I feel. So for instance, understanding if this is the first time that you're buying something online, dude, it arriving to your house, it's impossible to describe. And this generation may not get us, but I was the generation that put in your credit card, your parents' credit card online, and them trusting you that some game was going to arrive in the mail magically. Like, so it's really cool that you have a very, narrow understanding of who you're going for and how to build those experiences for them, because it can be especially challenging when it's like a technical project. You get started, you feel like you're not really making any progress, and then that's the end of the story.
It is, again, since before I start, I always have this philosophy. Is it going to be difficult? Absolutely. Can it be like one of the things? So last night, just for a little bit of context, last night I was speaking in University of Berkeley University. It's University of Berkeley. Most of the audience was like the student from second semester student. My goal was after the presentation, I want to see if people gets it, if people gets the idea, if people feel they can build and deploy a web3 frontend or decentralized frontend with a very little knowledge in React. So that's why I created the presentation in such a way that it shows how different, there was 3 different examples. I could have someone give me advice on, oh, you should have one big project that you should type there and you should do it. But my plan was, I want to have this one line small project that shows you it takes you 15 minutes to build and deploy something. then build up for that with some more sophisticated, like, okay, this first one is a toy project, but you can build real sophisticated project with these tools. So is it difficult? Yes, but it needs a lot of empathy and understanding for audience. We are not like we are not there yet, but our goal, one of the founder that I admire, the founder of Airbnb. So he still hosts guests in his apartment. Why? Do you need the money?
Because
No,
he's creepy.
because he want to know what is the experience looks like. He talk with his customer can I improve this experience much better? So this is another kind of a learning experience, and I'm still trying to do and want to be better. Is like a work with developer, build something for them, and then um, build a welcoming environment where people feel they can build a great app. Sorry, go ahead.
That beginner's mindset and humility are the most important thing. And it's, this may be obvious, but at the beginning, it's not something you think about actively because you're an actual beginner. But as you go, it's important to be very deliberate about it. I'll give you an example. I've been going to conferences and a bunch of stuff around the world, and I just love walking around, talking to people, meeting people, what they're working on. I'm not necessarily always like shilling near or something specific. Obviously, if I see a team working on a certain thing, I make some instructions, maybe push them in a certain direction. And after a couple of years, I'm at a conference, and I think it was like NearCon last year. They were like, "Oh, AVP, crazy! Everybody knows you." And I was like, "Okay." So at that point in time, I was like, "Isn't it obvious that everybody knows me because I am always on the ground talking to people? It's not the other way around."
Absolutely.
Next year, things started to change. I'm not complaining, but I'm also not like super satisfied. I started getting invited at like the VIP near foundation dinners, and I started hanging out with Pagoda Proximity Foundation, and they're amazing people. And these are connections that have really helped me to influence things in some ways. But I realized that I just like the grassroots. The best example that I have is we had a very special gathering at last year, 2023. Nate from Mintbase was very nice. He hosted us in his house. It was a very special evening. And then at the end, that night, there was a near foundation dinner. So they got little vans and we were all invited. For whatever reasons, the van got lost. Most people got Ubers. So by the time the two vans arrived, there was like not that many of us. And I was like, would it be disrespectful if I like pass on the dinner? And they're like, nah, it's fine. Do whatever you want. So they got on their van. Dude, I had a fucking private van to myself. And I got on and I was like, take me to the Hackers HQ. And I arrived and walked into Hackers HQ and I felt like I was coming back to life because that's what I wanted to be all along. I couldn't imagine being anywhere else at night, even though I think Vlad gave me COVID and there was like four of us dancing like weirdos in the dance floor and some people were already hacking, which was giving me anxiety. That eclectic disaster of building is what I'm here for. And look, I probably missed out on some amazing food and whatever, but yeah, beginner's mindset. There's a story there for you.
Yeah, I love the story. And I'm like that also. I would rather work with a developer who is hacking. So the fun thing that I learned this year. So I think it was in Hacker HQ during the hackathon, someone talked with me, asked a bunch of questions. I had no memory of that person. Then his team win the first prize in NearCon this year. And then one of his team member now working with us to help us with some stuff. And then she was telling me but I don't remember what I told him, but apparently he was so inspired and that he used Jutsu and built this component and then they win the first prize. And she heard about Jutsu and then she tried it and then she also liked it so much. This is the thing that I tell, again, I don't want to name names, but I give a lot of feedback for near ecosystem that, okay, I'll just say, so let's say in Berkeley. So of course, there was a hackathon near hosted, but there was no representative other than Cameroon and me. So they are already spent $50,000 for bounties. But I had so much fun talking with some of those kids. Like they will probably become the next big developer in different ecosystem. So we miss all those opportunities. And sometimes I just want to give little bit shout out to Cameron. I know he do a lot of different things, but like a lot of the community stuff that they organize in SF, I don't see anyone else in near ecosystem is talking about or organizing something in SF. This is a place where like a next probably 100 big Web3 app will pop up, and then there are no representative from people who are building abstraction, chain abstraction. There are no representative
I
from
mean,
people who are building stuff.
that's the existential crisis that I have that even prompted me to start learning JavaScript with Free Code Camp. I'm making progress very slowly, but I feel like I would be, I'm technically already doing it. I'm just not at all of them. But I'm really good at going to conferences and just like meeting people. And sure, I'm slightly unhinged, but what I keep hearing over and over again is that sometimes you just got to put like a human face, like one human connection that you can trust that sort of validates a blockchain. Sure, I have no fucking idea about chain signatures, and probably you can't explain it to someone standing in a hallway. But you pique their interest, you make a connection, and now Near occupies some real estate in their mind, and it's slow progress. And I mentioned it's an existential crisis because I'm trying to ascertain how much of a developer do you have to be a dev rel? Can we just come up with a different name? Like, I did, but I could no longer sustain the traveling out of my own budget to all these conferences. Dude, my travel routine was insane. From Denver to Korea and back, and I'm technically still paying rent in Australia. So I think that evangelist is like a super broad term. Even if we take a step back of me trying to argue for my own travel budget, the question right now is how do we get more evangelists in here? You could measure it on the activities they have in their city, but even like how vocal they are about like what they're building. I asked this to the DevUp guys. We host a hackathon. We have participants in our initiative. How can we think of these people that participate in something specific or interact with Near in some limited, timely way? How can we make them part of the community, keep them engaged? They'll go home and interact or learn in their own time. And I had this somewhere in my sporadic notes, but it may be a good time to ask you how you think of community, because something fascinating that good products have is that you start creating your own community through your users and your vertical, your area of expertise. Yeah, I'll leave it open ended and see where you take it because you often go to places that I really wasn't expecting.
Okay. So community. So I think that community is one of the most important for any developer tool, even not even developer tool, like any product. But the difference is a lot of Web3 company, they think community is their product. So community cannot be the product. Community is the vehicle for your tools to go to whatever you want to take it. Second thing is, I 100% agree with you. People like to interact with human. Human like to interact with human, not just code. If you are a great engineer building like this sophisticated, most sophisticated algorithm, and there is no one in the world can explain what you build in an easy way. It does not have to be you, can be anyone, and not even just whatever you have. It's not going to be like a popular by itself. That means someone have to talk about your products. Someone have to. It's like someone have to like all this interesting technology are really important, but it is as important as explaining a lot of those concepts. I'll just give you one example from here. What is it called? Data availability layer. So all this other chain now doing huge marketing and kind of taking it to the next level, like data availability, this and that. DR had this thing from probably day one, like when they went to main that infrastructure, but they missed the opportunity to coin a name and explain those technology to other people. So that's one thing we should learn. We have all this sophisticated technology, great technology, but we also have to be really good at explaining it to someone who are not engineer. So that's skill. It's a skill that people need to learn.
Which is interesting because the data availability one, I would actually put as a shortcoming. I'm not going to use the F word on this one, just be course corrected. But it was definitely an area where we fell short at a marketing level. We just never talked about it. But the reason why I mentioned the difference between marketing and evangelists is because I think evangelists are really important because it's very hard to communicate some things at a marketing level. Even though we
Yeah.
have a brand now and there's much better messaging from the foundation, the evangelist, it's like the art of the soft sell. Their proxy
I
validation that the problem that they have exists and that they've used something and it works, or they may share their excitement or what appeals to them in very unique ways. In some ways, like, what are you really selling? I'd say 60% is a blockchain, 40% is a human connection. It's a charisma, is a joke, is the offering to help someone achieve their goals. At that point, the blockchain is like byproduct. You're really just trying to customize a conversation to make it interesting and useful for someone else. You're never going to get that from a tweet with a very insightful chart comparing the cost of data availability. That's marketing. Evangelists is a little bit more subjective, but equally important, especially in these highly technical industries.
again, I agree with you. So one thing about marketing for developer product, I would say like a developer marketing is very different than normal marketing. I'm learning really every day now. So because I have to figure out that thing, the way you market the product is very different when your audience is developer. And I would say even first of all, you have to know your audience. Imagine like a best marketing, one of the best, I should not say the best, one of the best marketing lesson or company that we can learn is Nike. How much time Nike say, oh, we have the best thread in our shoe, or our sole is really great, or it is so much this or that, more technical stuff about the shoe. Probably 1% or 2% time. Most of the time they talk about how they empower the athlete, how they love the athleticism, and how the shoe can bring you those things. So when even technology, right? So my I have a formula, simple formula everyone can borrow. It's it should be anything we do should be first inspirational, then educational. It cannot be just educational, because a lot of time what we do is we educate, oh, it is the Rust, it is the EVM, or it is the ZK EVM or ZK, all these things. But why we even need that technology? Of
The
Go ahead.
Apple marketing, which is brilliant, when they release a new phone, they don't really
Mhm.
tell you what the fuck it's in it. They show you like almost like a mini film made with a phone. And that's when you start to think, damn it, like I have an entire movie studio in this thing. Let's
Absolutely,
go.
absolutely, absolutely. So these are the company that we can learn. I hate to bust a lot of bubbles. Like Web3 is nothing special. So Web3 is just a database, or blockchain is just a database that cannot lie. It has a lot of use cases. And the moment we become humble and say, hey, this is a great technology and these are the way we can use it, and these are the things we stand for. Because imagine throughout this history, people use product that stand for something. So, but it cannot be hey, we are special. We are this special group of people. We are this special group of technology. That's not how you will be inclusive and bring everyone. So we have to be humble and say Web3 is a technology. It's probably not great for everything, but this is the philosophy where you can own your data, you can do this and that. And this is what you build, like a ZK. I know a lot of people super excited about ZK ML because my intersection with ML, those kind of technology, like a differential privacy and a lot of those things, some of us work in 5, 6 years ago. There are some technical limitation, but we cannot start with this is a super complex algorithm and technology, we have to start with this is a simplest way. One of the conference last week I went, so this guy explained it really well. So he said, I'm building something that like that allow you to log in anywhere without remembering the password. What authentication platform, like a single sign-on that can sign in everywhere. He could go and say, hey, we are building this ZK ML technology and that takes you key and then like
But this is
encrypting
why
different.
sometimes people take pride in being a contrarian, and inevitably at some point the contrarians are the mainstream, and it takes balls. You don't got to burst bubbles, but you got to have balls to say, hey, actually, I need to start course correcting if I want to get ahead, because this is not getting anywhere. Look, there was a point in time, and I think we've passed it, but maybe it's a 50-50. There was a point in time where the product didn't fucking matter. There were magic words. Dude, web3 and crypto were the insanity of 2018. You could have anything. I saw people having dog walking services with fucking someone dressed up like Pikachu. Doesn't matter. If it is on the blockchain, people thought it was like the next big thing. It's called the Web 2 bubble, early 2000s. I don't know, I was too young. Now with AI, ZK, it's very easy for people to hold one word and have a very simple association of this has a lot of potential. But over time, inevitably, because some people try to take advantage, and the people that are building real product figure out that it's impossible to convey what you're actually doing with a simple word, then we start to have that bifurcation into actual products. Dude, I'm telling you, we're seeing it now. We're beginning to see it now. Even with Near, let's not be controversial. Let's keep it in house. Even with Near, right now, we're all one team. No, we're fucking not. Right now, we're all Near because we're a blockchain and people think that blockchain is a one word, big potential. There will be breakout teams that were building during the bear market and teams that are not part of this group think that maybe makes them feel comfortable, but they're just going by the playbook, product, your users, a business model, just iterate. You stay in your lane, but you expand the size of the highway, whatever you want to call it. Those are the breakout successes. And in 5 years' time, the rest in this larger community, yes, we're still all in your ecosystem, but everyone else will be looking at the success stories to try to emulate it. And at the moment, it's weird because we do have Kaching and Sweat, and I guess that they are big success stories, but they're imported. These businesses existed before they came to Near, and they did something really well as far as whatever it is that they're doing. Some people cannot explain it now. No comments. But those homegrown products are being built right now on Jutsu. How does that sound?
Yeah, that sounds really. That's one of the vision is to empower all these developer to build their application in Jutsu, and our goal is to how can we make developer 10x more productive, and especially one of the thing like you mentioned, you had a question before about developer evangelists and how do we scale that thing. I think that's where you will also see, interestingly, a lot of AI will come into play where when you are coding, instead of you look into a document, an AI agent probably will give you contextual answer or context. Like in during that context, maybe you type like a social dot, and then it will tell you like these are the different functions, these are the different parameters you can pass into that function. Or if you just want to know about account abstraction, maybe you don't have to go to 100 different places. So there will be a lot of this kind of a AI chatbot and agent kind of thing that will give you advice in point in time. But do we still need human? Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
I'm
we can
mindful of
scale
your
it with,
time.
yeah.
So there were a couple of things I want to clarify. The first one is you've mentioned a few times that Jutsu helps shorten and simplify that journey to deploying boss components. Is that the focus now? Is Jutsu going to expand over time to do more the full stack, smart contracts, and whatever else is in their data availability? I don't know. They keep throwing shit at it. What can users expect now, and what does the roadmap look like in the foreseeable future?
We have a public roadmap where we're going to definitely still keep going building on boss component, but next 3 to 6 months we are exploring contract because we want to become the full stack web3 developer platform or full stack web3 copilot where you can build your contract and your front end. So that's the ultimate goal. And
If I had a couple of ideas of existing smart contracts that I think could have a different front end, or maybe someone does like minor modifications to the smart contract, but then you really enhance that front end user experience and design, etc. Would these be like good, like smaller projects or like case studies for people to use Jutsu? They already have some of the backend functionality and just like experiment doing the boss components. Because I'm always a bit confused between the decentralized front end being everything on screen and then the boss components being like the individual chunks that make up the greater whole. And I'm like, I just want to make it look good. Could somebody go to shit? And I said Shitsu because I'm going to talk to the Shitsu community to get them to do something here. But how should someone think about that?
imagine the Nearcon app. So it was a mobile experience. So you probably use that app and bought those hoodies, and I got these hoodies from buying
Fantastic hoodie. If you're watching, if you're listening on Spotify, you gotta go to YouTube and watch this piece of merch.
So the entire platform or entire thing was built on Jutsu, and that contained the gateway and the components. So it is not anymore just a toy project. So the conference, like the NearCon, the conference page and the speaker and all these things was a decentralized front end. Like we made that thing with Jutsu. Some of the component in Keep On that was made with Jutsu. So it's not like we have a lot of it's not anymore example. It's like a production battle tested component or apps that were built with Jutsu.
Would it make sense? I mean, I'm thinking that we could potentially explore some of the public funding community avenues and maybe get like these smaller projects funded, get some devs from the community. Would be a great learning experience. But I'm thinking even something like Astra. We're still using the original Sputnik smart contract. It's incredibly powerful. It's incredibly versatile. The original Astra, the front end was like full of middleware and centralized and very expensive. And now we have some components on the boss, I guess. There's the Pikes Peak one, and now there's one called Astra Plus. They work the basics. But I'm thinking hypothetically, if I wanted to create whatever, a collective of DAOs in rural Colombia, and I wanted to have a fully customized front end using the same functionality, could someone go to Jutsu and basically let their imagination fly, Jutsu help them and use the Astra backend or the Sputnik smart contract?
Yes, you can. So that was one of the idea that we wanted to work, but later we are now building more the developer facing feature. But one of the thing is the way I see it, the boss ecosystem should be like there should be a gateway for let's say DAO or Sputnik DAO, and then from there people like imagine building a marketplace or an app that a gateway that's like for Sputnik DAO, and that people build those components from Jutsu or using Jutsu and then deploy, and then Sputnik DAO like maybe you like this way of the visualization, maybe you like that way of the visualization, but then you can have it your own kind of a dashboard where you can put those things in different places, and then if you want to build a public good, like you can probably create bounty where people can create those components. So these are possible. So now the question is like someone have to think like a more product mindset. Okay, we want to build this thing as a product where another human will use. Probably they don't know what is Sputnik DAO or how a DAO work or but they know how to click a vote button. They know how to participate in certain things. So it can be done. If you are interested in doing that project, we'll be happy to collaborate and build a gateway for that.
I mean, there's something smaller. The original Barry Club, I think Eugene just relaunched as DACA Finance. But what I always liked about that one is that on the corner it says fork me. So there's a GitHub repo, and technically people could deploy their own. If you're playful, you could play with the parameters, maybe like the size of the screen. I think with his latest deployment, he played with some of the tokenomics. My gripe with most of Web3 is that the only thing on the screen are the buttons that you click on and the output. There's never an explanation of how do you play the game. And sometimes there's like a button to an FAQ and it takes you to a separate page. If you were to think along those product lines, I don't even think that you have to change the original game that much. The Jutsu community has the crossword puzzle that Mike Purvis wrote the smart contract. It's similar. Can we just make it prettier? It doesn't even have to change that much. At the moment, it's just like a static white page with one crossword. From there, I guess devs can get more and more creative. Maybe you can create a new page where you can see like historical crossword puzzles. You can create a new page where you can have a list of the people that have won in the past. It's about making it easier for people. Because to me, Mike Purvis creating this almost a year ago and this community taking it up and they've been using it and distributing money, but it hasn't been developed further. I'm like, are we lacking the devs? Are we lacking the interest? Are we lacking the funding? Is it just too much friction? So yeah, maybe this could be like smaller case studies that the team could consider if they're within the current Jutsu scope.
I think again, it going back to the product mindset. So you probably notice like when I'm saying talking about Jutsu roadmap, it's we are hyper focused on building that productivity part. Let's say we can have some content that explain, let's say, make it better and explain, hey, how you take something like this and build something better. But these are not the project that we are going to take ownership, because in my mind, if we want to, that thing can become a product, right? But then you have to keep building it. So one of the thing I noticed like the last 3 years in building a Near, and it's not anything special about Near in any other ecosystem, like a 90% of the people who build project, either they leave the project or they start building something else. So no one, like the consistency part is really missing. Only few people I see like they are really focused and building like something really well. That's a philosophy and mindset probably we have to encourage in Web3 as a whole.
I've noticed that as well. I like to give people the benefit of the doubt and think that we're just at that very early stage of experimentation. So maybe you do something smaller just to learn and to test, but that's not going to be like your big thing. And I'd like to think that maybe people, after doing 2 or 3 small things, and maybe they're open source, somebody else hacks on top of it, maybe you really find your thing and you can go deeper.
This is to challenge your thought here. When you use email, right? So email use PGP, some encryption for encryption, right? And that was done by probably one guy, but that algorithm still exists. Gmail.
Zimmerman? Is it Michael Zimmerman?
I forget the name, but what I'm trying to say is like
Phil's.
Zimmerman. So what I'm trying to say is even when we are building this small project, we can still have a mindset of, okay, so this is probably going to be used by other people. So unless we are building it for me, that's totally different. And you can
Small is relative because you can say small by size, small by impact, small by whatever metric. But that's a good observation. So you say that Jutsu is focused on the people that are building the long-term projects. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Yes. Gradually, of course, we want to support the individual developer, but probably team. And the way I see it is like a 2 to 3, 4, 5 years from now, like a lot of Web2 company will start building or using Web3 technology. And then they will probably want to have the similar kind of experience they have when they build a Stride project or when they build an e-commerce project. So think about it. E-commerce and NFT marketplace are like technically not very different, but like a underlying infrastructure probably different, but like a look and feel and there are a lot of technical work are same. So if all those people have to build something for Web3, they will need similar kind of tools or similar kind of experience. So that's where we want to be. So I believe the developer ecosystem will grow in Web3, and developer will build our consumer product. I believe like in few years, I don't know when, but like more and more Web3 developer will start focusing on consumer product than just infrastructure. Infrastructure is great. Consumer,
We technically need consumer products like right now.
yes.
And I like that Near has that explicit focus now. That's why I like Jutsu. We may be in like slightly different times in the simulation, or I may be having a slightly different customer segment that may kick in at a different time than you. But I think that overall, Jutsu is definitely rising to be at the epicenter of that consumer
Thank you.
application. If I were to come across someone now with a project that makes sense, it's ambitious, it's more of a long-term plan, I would not only recommend them Near because of that core stack and the possibilities of what can be built. I would probably now also recommend them to Jutsu, at least to go and talk to the team and
Thank
the
you.
developers to understand what's possible now. And yeah, it makes me excited to think that we can have more applications of high quality built quicker. So thank you for your services.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Is there anything that we can do to help the team now? You've mentioned that there is some expansion or reaching out to universities in the US through DevHub and Banyan. Would you be interested in people from other communities around the world to reach out, or would other places with near campus, like for over the next 3 to 6 months, if anyone listening to this wants to reach out, or if I come across anyone that may be able to help, what would be the most beneficial for the project?
So I think like if you are running a kind of a regional hub, and then you have a lot of new developer that you want to onboard, you are probably working with university that you want to onboard them. It would be great to partner with all those regional hub and give a platform to give developer the first great experience. That's so university, or you are like working with the enterprise, but you are not sure about how their first experience will be when they're building a bigger project, because they're coming from Web 2. We have a deeper knowledge in Web 2 and Web 3, so we can help them. And if you're running a hackathon, now you want to provide this great tool, then also we can be partner with those hackathons. We are already experimenting with Hackbox, building better experience for hackers. So we want to expand it to Southeast Asia or North America or like everywhere. So I think the bigger focus for this year is, I think next million developer will come from outside US. So I love US developer, but most of the developer will come from outside US. So that's one of the thing I want to do is like a partner with regional hub, university, or if you're running a blockchain club to grow.
It's a tough spot because I would imagine that at this stage you can probably buy a really nice house in Bangladesh and be closer to some friends and family, but we really do need you in San Francisco. That product mindset and hustle, it's there. And I think that you don't have to be there forever, but I do see that role of let's try to export these opportunities, these mindset, these tools. Sounds good. Look, I'm happy to introduce you, if you haven't already, to like the Open Web Academy team in Mexico. Audio is also starting to do a lot more reach out in TAM more broadly. The Meteor Wallet team is also getting organized in Malaysia. Last I heard, they were reaching out to 3 universities for near campus, and that was doing well. Paras team, Ricky in Indonesia, they're also increasingly active there, and they're like multi-chain as well. So it could be an interesting set of developers. Korea, huge, not as close to that ecosystem, but I'm sure that it wouldn't be hard to make the connections. So yeah, I'll definitely keep an open mind. And oh, damn it, you've inspired me again to learn how to code. It's a Friday night in Medellin, Colombia, and I may stay in on my computer. How cool am I?
Yeah. Give for everyone, just the message is that we are not selling anything. Just go give a try. Jutsu, give it a try, and then give us feedback. I'm always here to improve. And this is a tool for you, not for us. We are building it for everyone. So help us shape the tools the way you would like to see it in the future.
help us help you. Let Jutsu abstract the abstraction of the chain. Whoa.
That's poetic.
Zahid, it was a pleasure talking to you. I am not gonna lie. Sometimes you gotta think twice with some engineers or some people that may just not be as expressive. And we are creating a podcast for DevHub that's going to be more technical in nature. But you've been amazing. You've explained things in a way that allowed me to see things differently from what I already knew, which is great. It doesn't happen often. And I've also learned a bunch of new things. But the most important thing, if this is a metric that you're taking into account, is I'm inspired. I had fun, but I'm inspired. I think it was a good use of the 2.5 hours. And I really hope that everyone listening to this will also start to feel the momentum on Near. Sometimes it feels like we're stuck. Sometimes it feels like there's a lot of partnerships, but it's hard to convey to people that building great stuff takes time. So I think that it's great timing to share the Jutsu story roughly 1 year since it started. And especially the way that I see it, not only see the potential of Jutsu, but the multiplier effect. Hopefully it will enable a lot more people to do more stuff. So thanks so much for your work. I am very happy to have you in the ecosystem. And if there's anything I can do to help, just reach out.
Thank you.
Okay.
No, I think we should have another podcast about how the Apple Vision Pro will change all these different industry. Like, I'd love to talk
For sure. I mean,
about that.
It's weird for me because since I started in web3 and since I started going deeper into the ecosystem, the technology landscape has changed so much that a lot of the original vision that I came in with has changed. Some of it is irrelevant, some of it is wrong, some of it is thinking too small. The Apple vision could be an entire podcast on its own for sure, but dude, even ZK, the new phase to whatever stake works for, and the shift from the original Nightshade to this new form of validation, like things are moving very fast. And
but if you're like an older person like me, you probably have seen all these hype, right? So we have seen AI. People might think some of the people who feel like now is the AI hype, but there was AI hype, 3 different AI hype like the last 10 years, right? So like blockchains, all these things have hype. Apple Pro or the VR, like it was supposed to be mainstream like 6 years, 7 years ago. But it changes everything when it created new category and new platform. So that's like I'm excited like how blockchain, AI, and this experience. So now I'll just give this example for thinking. Imagine like today you buy NFT to own something, right? So you buy NFT, you have it. But what if like you could experience your NFT? So you buy NFT, you have an experience, right? With the VR.
Oh my God.
So it changes a lot of things. So
It changes everything.
Exactly.
Wait,
so
how much of an experience are we talking about?
We can have another podcast 3 hours.
I'll see you in Denver in 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I'll be chasing you with a mic. You'll be running around with your Apple goggles.
If I can get hold into it, it's like a backed up, takes a few days.
We'll steal them if we have to.
Yeah. Okay.
Awesome.
So we'll
thanks so much for your time. That's the end of another episode. As always, I just want to thank you for listening because, let's be honest, you are amazing! And I also want to remind everyone that everything contained in this episode is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Nothing on this podcast shall be construed as financial, medical, or any other type of advice, and you should always consult with licensed professionals before making any financial decisions. Make sure that you like and subscribe so that you stay up to date with the latest episode. We've got a steamy hot pipeline of guests that will keep you entertained right through the bear market. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you soon. Bye.